Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about why it is really important for you to rip slash back up your disk-based games to a computer. So let's go and talk about it. So we all know disc-based video games, they are a lot more fragile compared to a cartridge-based games, of course, because, obviously discs, they can get scratched, bent easily, and of course over time disc rot can happen, potentially, though, which sadly isn't something we can prevent, of course. But, if you're going to spend these days, especially like top dollar on stuff like this, you want to make sure it works, right? So that's why, it's always important to, see the data side of the disk to make sure, it has, no scratches and all that, and to make sure it's just in good condition. Because, if you're going to spend as much money as, these games go for these days, you want to make sure the disk is 100% functional, right? So, how do you know if it is functional without you having the game, though, of course? Well, the seller may say that the game is 100% functional, they did play through the entire game and all that, and it worked for them. Okay, cool, that's one thing to go off of right there. You can't trust that, though, of course, because how do you know if they actually did play through the game, right? Of some seller on eBay, whatnot, and all that fun stuff. Well, if, the disc already looks good enough as is, then you order it, and once it does come in, what's the first thing you should do? Not put it in the console and play it. It's yeah, you can do that. That's up to you, of course. But what I suggest that you do is that you need to rip it to your computer to verify that the disk is actually 100% functional. Because let me tell you guys a story. This game right here, Suikoden II, I recently picked this up last month. If you guys saw my September pickups video, I did get this game last month. I tried ripping this game to my my workstation at my office earlier yesterday it was, and it's having some sector errors, meaning there's some data in the disk or sectors of the data layer in the disk, aka the game itself, is faulty. There's some parts of it that is faulty. Yeah, and this is Suikoden II. This is a $300+ game today, so that's not really a good thing to see happen and all that. It's a big thing that you are shopping for games these days, use old games and all that. You got to make sure they do work properly, and I'll show you proof of of that this is faulty right here pretty soon here. And also an example of, the disc may look really good, but it's suffering disk rot, though, and you can't tell that, of course, with the eBay listing, of course. But, yeah, let's go and cut to, where of me ripping this game here to a PC, and you'll see right there, as well as me talking about what disk rot looks like. So here I will prove to you the fact that this copy does not work. So this is the original one that I showed you in the video. Here's the disc, and yes, this is the original case here that I got from the seller, and it does have the back art on it, but this part is not the original one, of course, but that doesn't matter. Alright, so here's the disc. Alright, right here we got image burn. This is what I suggest you get if you're going to be ripping PS1 and PS2 games, since it just automatically just rips the games to your computer here, but yep, you see the disc pops up right there. We'll just leave it as normal, and we'll start ripping it. Now pay attention to where it says time remaining right there. Because once it hits 29%, because that's for the last times that I've done this, where it just completely fails. But yeah, just watch the time remaining once it hits 29%. In fact, remember, in the meantime, I will pull up the log file, so we'll also have that up too. Right, so sorry for this, not well-handled capture here, but, to prove that, I'm not cutting this or anything, well, this is the best way to prove it for you guys. Alright, almost there, and just 10 more. Well, all seems fine here, but once it hits 29, that's when all else fails, sadly. Okay, so it's 28% this time, but yeah, you can see that time remaining spiking up quite a lot there. Ow, I hit my table. Alright, now let's pull up the log file here. And now it went to 29. There it is. You see that? Unrecovered read error. With sector error right there. That means there is a legit problem with the disk. So let's go and discuss of what I think is going on with the disk. But hey, there's your proof right there. This is a faulty disk. That the seller tells me it's 100% working. Well, if it is 100% working, you have to do this to confirm that it is in fact 100% working, regardless if you play through the game entirely on an original console. It doesn't matter. This is how you can confirm the disk is 100% in good working condition. And for the sake of it, I'll show you why you should check your disk, because this is what potentially could happen if it's faulty. So here's a copy of The Sims PS2 game. Yeah, it's nothing special, but to show you for, reasons for the video here. It looks fine right here. The overall disk does look fine. However, if we point this disk up towards a source of light right here, there you see that two white specks right there, that you can see the light through it. That means disk rotting is happening to this disk here. Therefore, the data that is in that section of the disk is no longer recoverable, and there's no way you can fix that. So yeah, this is why you absolutely should check to make sure that your disks do work, even if they do look perfectly fine like this right here. But seeing that right there makes this disk completely unusable, sadly. But oh well, it's The Sims. This is like a $3 game anyway. A thing to note, if a disk is suffering disk rot, there's absolutely nothing you can do to prevent that, of course. There's nothing that you can know previously before it happens that to let you know like it's going to happen and all that, because a thing that we do have to accept is that, yeah, even these right here, one day, these will stop working permanently because of disk rot and all that. Hopefully it'll happen before I die, of course. Well, no, after I die. But yeah, it is something that we have to accept that it's not that it's going to happen eventually one of these days. But understand this though, disk rotting, as long as you take good care of your stuff, keep all your games in like a well-conditioned environment throughout its entire lifespan, like it's going to be very rare for disk rotting to happen. And really it's mostly happening for like older optical discs out there though, because because if you may have seen online, like the discs that seem to be suffering most disk rot for like the last few years has been like all the older Sega, CD, Saturn stuff, just like the earliest of like CD technology back in like the early mid-90s basically. But that happened it did happen with my copy of Sims on PS2, of course, so it can still happen with these systems and all that. And there's nothing you can do about it, sadly. Just the best thing you can do is just keep preserving your games, make sure it's all in great condition, a good environment and all that, and just if it happens then, sadly. But yeah, in the case of Suikoden II, though, what I think is going on, though, is I did like hold it up to a light, and there is no signs of disk rotting happening to this. But I did look on the data side, and there does appear to be like 2 scratches that it didn't look bad to me at first, but after looking at them again, they look kind of deeper than what I initially thought when I first saw them. So I think like that's probably what's going on with them, is that there's like 2 different scratches on this disk here that seems to have hit the data sector of this disk, but But let's just say, like, if the seller that I bought this from said that, yeah, it 100% worked for him all the way through and he recently played it, it's like, okay, fine. Maybe, like, the damage that this disc has is only touching the dummy sector of the data layer, which, if you're not aware, dummy sectors in discs, and you'll especially see this on GameCube games especially, but dummy sectors of a disc is where, like, you have the game data right here, but the developers or the publishers, they had to fill the rest of the space of the disk to meet like standards for the disk when it was getting printed. So they filled that extra space up with dummy files, basically, hence why it's called the dummy sector. And all that stuff right there is just useless. It's just junk that's just not used. Just they had to put that in there so that way they could finish printing the discs, basically. I don't know if like all PS1 games or PS2 games are like that, but that's definitely the case with GameCube games, though, if you know how those discs were made. But regardless, though, there's damage to this disc, though. So, and like, I am getting in contact with eBay already, started return requests, and I hope eBay does side with me on this, because, you know, if they don't, then to me, this is a $320 loss right here. So yeah, let's hope that like all ends well for me on this. But regardless, though, I think like the damage is only in the dummy sector, as I said. But regardless, if like you can play through this game on a PS1, I can't get this to work on my PS2. I've tried my multiple different systems. I can't get it to work. It does boot on my PS1, so I imagine it probably does play all the way through. But like I said, it doesn't work on my PS2, and you saw a video that I can't rip it because there is damage to this disc, so therefore it's not 100% working as the seller described to me, so therefore it is misleading. Regardless if it's something that may not be an intended way to use this officially when this was made, but it still doesn't change the fact that this is faulty, and with how expensive this is, that is really concerning for me, of course. So yeah, and understand this, I am not ripping games so that way for nefarious reasons, because the reason I'm doing it is to verify if this works. And also so that way, once it's ripped, I'll have a digital copy of the disc, and I'll transfer to my X station and all that, so that way I don't have to keep using this disc, and I can preserve it on my shelf and make sure that I don't have to keep doing any wear on the disc, of course. So that's why I'm doing this. It's not to like share it with anyone, because if this ripped successfully, the disc was in perfect condition, I wouldn't be making this video, of course. But maybe in the future, though, because this is a subject I want to talk about. But you know, this was the kicker for it, though, recently. But yeah, that's a brief summary of like why you should be ripping your used games that you pick up, whether if it's, you know, on eBay or your local retail store. You should always, like, as soon as you get home, get on your computer and rip them to make sure that they do 100% work. If they don't, return it, because who knows? Maybe, like, yeah, this may work as the intended use for it originally on a PlayStation 1, but with the damage that it's on, and if it's only in the dummy sector, like, who knows, maybe in like a few months or a year, this may be suddenly getting a disk rot, or the damage may like expand to the actual data sectors of the disk, so therefore I can't use this anymore. So if you guys are thinking I'm being extreme with the whole thing, well, let me ask you this. If you buy like a used car, whatever, let's say, and like all the core stuff works, you know, all like the shifts, they all work, you can go as like all the speed limits for it, you know, 55 to like 85, what have you. But as you're like trying to use it, you go into like the dashboard, go into the settings to, I don't know, maybe change like lighting or something with the radio, and you change one thing, but because you did that for like a particular setting, it caused the vehicle to shut off, and that wasn't supposed to happen, of course. So clearly there's something faulty with it, regardless that it may not be a core thing for the vehicle, for the main use you'd be using it for. It's still something faulty, and with how much money you're probably going to invest in this whole thing, don't you want to make sure everything 100% works when you do get it? I think the same thing applies here. whether if I'm being extreme with that, especially just for games, like, I don't know, but to me, it's all about the principle with this here, especially for, again, how much money this thing goes for, of course. So yeah, that'll do it for this video, guys. Before I go along any longer on this, let me know in the future if you guys want me to make a video explain like how you actually do rip games and what's the preferred methods to do it for like per system and all that. Let me know in the comments if you guys would be interested in seeing that. But regardless, please share this with your friends, family, and whatnot. Please comment below of your thoughts on all of this, and do subscribe for more content like this in the future. Until then, guys, I will see you next time.